Bidirectional redemption plus revenge plus strong plus revenge of growth across a green campus to a light mature society. Bai Li is a name changed by his mother Qin Liangsheng. Even though the night may be long, it will eventually bring a beam of light at dawn. Her original name was Bai Li, also known as Sheng Sheng Xiang Li. She was given the name by his father, but as a daughter, she left sooner or later. From a young age, Bai Li has been independent and able to protect his mother from domestic violence. She works hard, studies hard, and earns money hard, just to earn a comfortable place for herself and her mother. She is strong, proud, and cunning, clear and firm in what she wants. Bai Li originally thought that his mother had finally escaped domestic violence and met a lifelong companion, but later it turned out to be a grand conspiracy. If she takes something that doesn't belong to her, she wants them to return it. Let such people also taste the pain of loss. There is no such thing as repaying grievances with virtue. The principle of her actions is to seek revenge with an eye. What's going on? Has Chen Mo, who has always despised her, turned out to be an infatuated person? Isn't that just right? Why not use the retaliatory tool delivered to your door? Just, what should we do? She seems to be also tempted. Intention. Love can only be love, and love cannot become a sharp blade of any harm. Some people spend their entire lives learning to love and be loved. The author has something to say. In this article, there is no golden finger, there are sweetness and cruelty, gain and loss, and it is not a campus story. The early campus plot is just a necessary process, from a lush campus to a mature society, where everyone gradually recognizes themselves and grows. Chapter 1. Second Marriage to a Rich Person. You are listening at novelfull.audio. On the second day of the 6th lunar month, everything is suitable and marriage is the most suitable. This city is known for its wealthy villa district, Haomen Manor, with a total of 18 villas located in the highest mansion. Lin Mansion. Today, second marriage. At this moment, the night is getting deeper, with no fireworks soaring to the sky, no firecrackers ringing in unison, no luxurious and grand wedding ceremony. Everything is quiet, except for the big red lanterns hanging high at the entrance and the scattered double happiness words pasted in the courtyard, showing a slight sense of joy. Dad. You ask Butler Lu to remove all the dazzling red lanterns and the word happiness, which I hate to see. What big red lanterns do you hang on a second marriage and paste the word happiness? If it were in ancient times, this would be a concubine, she wouldn't be worthy. Besides, she's not just a father. You brought her here. His voice seemed to lack strength, but his anger was not small. After speaking, he could still hear a clear and crisp sound of tapping the table. Shut up. I've taken care of your mood enough. I didn't give you a decent wedding for Aunt Qin, so I hung a lantern. You don't mind. Hurry up and go to the restaurant to eat. Don't be rude at the banquet. Today is all your Aunt Qin's close relatives, I'll tell you. The voice suddenly decreased, and the two people who were originally engaged in intense conversation deliberately lowered their voices, without any sound. Miss Bai, are you here? Bai Li just went to the bathroom to tidy up her new dress for today, but didn't expect to go back in the wrong direction. Passing by the study, she happened to hear this conversation. Immersed in the conversation just now, Bai Li regained his composure, suppressed his anger, pulled the corner of his mouth, and showed a simple and cute smile, revealing two small tiger teeth. This smile was bright, grand, and yet cute. She turned around and politely replied, Uncle Lu, I just went to the bathroom and wanted to go back to the restaurant, but I seem to have taken the wrong direction. If it's not troublesome, could you show me a way? No one could resist the request of such a lovely and obedient little girl. Steward Lu immediately put on a friendly smile on his originally expressionless face and approached Bai Li, leaning slightly. It's not troublesome, Miss Bai, please, he said as Bai Li walked ahead. Manager Lu paused slightly, confirming that there was no movement or abnormality outside the study. He followed Bai Li half a step away and led her to the banquet hall for dinner. Bai Li Yuguang noticed Lu Butler's actions and couldn't help but think to himself, did his mother, who had escaped domestic violence, really meet someone who is worth living with for a lifetime, as she said, after a long separation and reunion? Is such a family really as simple and pure as my mother thought? Bai Li, who was pondering, was interrupted by his uncle's voice from afar in the banquet hall. Sister, you've made it through this time. When you marry into a wealthy family, don't just focus on enjoying your own happiness. Don't forget your brother in the future. To be honest, you're still a good-looking younger brother and sister. At this age, you have a curvaceous figure, otherwise you wouldn't have had this blessing. I never expected that you would have gotten divorced right, and married into a wealthy family, turning a wild chicken into a phoenix. My aunt continued. With vulgar and insulting words, Bai Li didn't hear his mother Qin Liangsheng's retort at all. She sighed in her heart. Her kind and good-tempered mother was really taken care of by her uncle's family in this lifetime. Bai Li furrowed his brows and glanced at the butler Lu walking beside him. There was a moment of disdain on his calm face, which subtly moved the corners of his mouth before returning to expressionless. Bai Li couldn't help feeling resentful in his heart. The so-called uncle family never came out to protect their mother when their father abused her at home. When he tried his best to persuade their mother to divorce, he not only did not support him but also stood on the side of the man who indulged in alcohol and domestic violence, fearing that his mother would divorce him and even cut off their relationship on the spot. Such relatives, upon learning that their mother and Lin Zhijing were married, immediately rushed over and put on the list of their eldest uncle. Mom, uncle's tea has already cooled down. Hurry up and add some water to him. After saying so much, he should be thirsty. Bai Li nodded slightly to thank butler Lu and walked into the restaurant, carrying a light blue skirt. The uncle and aunt, who had just been chattering incessantly, immediately fell silent when they saw Bai Li return, pursed their lips, and picked up the tea cup in front of them, pretending to be drinking tea. They naturally knew the strength of this niece. It was she who forcefully took a beer bottle from her father and called the police with a head full of blood that allowed her mother to divorce smoothly. Her stubborn personality, if it angered her, would be easy to get rid of, and it was possible to drive her away. However, we cannot easily miss this rare opportunity to climb the ranks of wealthy relatives. Bai Li scanned the so-called uncle and relatives on the table one by one, looking around at his aunt who was shining with gold, and admiring his cousin who was dressed all over. Unfortunately, her aunt's family never came. Bai Li knew that in her aunt's eyes, her mother had clearly just escaped from the wolf's den and now ran into the tiger's den of a wealthy family. Finally, his gaze fell on his panicked and helpless mother. Qin Liangsheng saw his daughter finally return, and his eyes flickered like a savior. Bai Li gently stroked his mother's shoulder a few times and sat down beside her. Today her mother is very beautiful. Her originally slim figure is dressed in tailor-made clothes, and the red handmade qipao is particularly beautiful. Her previously slightly pale face is also dyed with a shy blush, and her exquisite makeup covers up the traces of time. Oh, I'm really sorry. Just now, the group suddenly had an urgent matter to deal with in the study, which delayed the time. Don't blame me. The protagonist who should have been at the banquet early, Lin Zhijing, the owner of the Lin mansion, arrived late holding the pearl of her hand, Lin Jiehui. Lin Jiehui, dressed in a white dress, appeared dazzling and abrupt on such a festive day. Group urgent matter. Bai Li, who knew the real reason, stared fixedly at Lin Jiehui standing behind Lin Zhijing until Lin Jiehui's haughty princess-like gaze swept through the crowd and met her, as if frightened by her straightforward gaze. Lin Jiehui quickly averted her gaze. Lin Zhijing walked straight to Qin Liangsheng's side, gently stroking his waist, and raised his glass to apologize with lingering affection and full of apology. Qin Liangsheng's shy and flushed face, full of love and happiness, was something that Bai Li had never seen in nearly 18 years. She stood on one side and quietly looked at her mother. Over the years, she had seen her mother's scarred appearance too many times. At this moment, the happy little woman's mother covered her memories with heavy shadows. She suddenly felt her eyes moist and silently prayed to her mother for all her hardships and happiness for the rest of her life. The middle-aged man in front of her sincerely treated her, and the rest. Bai Li glanced at Lin Jiahui again, but it was not so important. "Dad, Uncle Chen's family hasn't arrived yet, so we can't have a banquet." Lin Jiahui suddenly walked out from behind Lin Jijing and squeezed into the middle of the two. Qin Liangsheng stumbled back 2 steps and was supported by Bai Li standing behind her. "No rules." Lin Jijing frowned and gave Lin Jiahui a slight glare, but his big hands grabbed her hand in time to stabilize her balance. "Sorry, this is a little girl. I'm just this one girl. I've been spoiled since I was young, and I haven't been used to any rules." "Don't mind." Lin Jijing turned to look at Bai Li and waved affectionately. "Xiao Li, you happen to meet each other. Coincidentally, you're of the same age, and we'll have companions for school and life together in the future." Bai Li turned to look at her mother, and Qin Liangsheng also smiled and nodded to signal her to go over. The harsh words she had just heard were still stuck in her heart, and she couldn't walk forward with a smile on her face. She just reached out her hand and said, "Hello, my name is Bai Li." Lin Jiahui glanced and turned her head to pay tribute to Lin, saying coquettishly, "Dad, they just washed their hands." Sigh. The feeling of disgust expressed in these words is too strong. Why is it that when we meet for the first time, we can't wait to give it a thumbs up? It's not your turn yet. With a cold snort, Bai Li grabbed Lin Jiahui's hand and forcefully pressed her up and down. Before Lin Jiahui could react, she suddenly let go and picked up the neatly stacked warm and wet handkerchief on the dining table. She carefully wiped it, turned around, and handed it to the servant beside her. She said softly, "It's dirty, please get a new one." Then she turned around and smiled innocently at Lin Jiahui, who was shocked. The butler Lu beside him saw this scene and his eyes twitched. This girl has a bit of personality, and his young lady has never suffered such a loss. "You." Lin Jiahui, who was about to get angry, was grabbed by Lin Jijing. "It's impolite. Didn't you just say you wanted makeup? Why don't you go quickly?" Under the pressure of Lin Jijing's respect, Lin Jiahui could only glare at Bai Li with hatred, and reluctantly walked out of the restaurant, carrying a white skirt under the servant service. Bai Li turned around and sat down at the table, where his cousin leaned over and whispered, "It seems that you may not be doing well here. This princess doesn't seem to be a good person." After finishing, he leaned back slightly, his envious gaze scanning from Bai Li's head to his feet, exclaiming, "This dress is really beautiful, isn't it expensive? Is the diamond on it really fake?" Bai Li was too lazy to pay attention and took a small sip from the teacup in front of him. When my cousin saw this, she felt bored and curled her mouth. She picked up the pre-dinner dim sum and ate them, muttering that they were delicious. The adults chatted for a while, but outside the restaurant, there was a bustle. Pushing open the door, a middle-aged man dressed appropriately, steady, and introverted entered. A pair of shrewd eyes left a deep impression on Bai Li, followed by a silent boy wearing a school uniform that was out of place with the atmosphere. Lin Jijing warmly greeted the visitors, and Bai Li speculated that this was the so-called Uncle Chen family that Lin Jiahui had just mentioned. The boy in the school uniform remained silent and sat down in a chair separated by a seat. His backpack was thrown and hung on the back of the chair, and the servant approached to help take it away. He waved his hand, emitting a strong aura of being far away from others. "Chen Mo, you have finally arrived." Lin Jiahui lifted her skirt and ran slowly to the boy. The servant behind her quickly called out in a low voice, "Miss, slow down, slow down." Bai Li rolled his eyes in his heart. Didn't he say that this young lady has a bad heart? Isn't she running quite fast? The boy stood up very gentlemanly and extended his hand to support Lin Jiahui. His voice was faint. The doctor said, "You can't exercise vigorously, don't run in the future." "Chen Mo, I thought you wouldn't come, you know. Just now." Lin Jiahui whispered in Chen Mo's ear. Adults are accustomed to the familiar behavior of these two people, looking at them with a kind and pleased expression. Lin Jijing said, "These two have grown up together since childhood, and we haven't seen each other for just 2 days. That's all we have to talk about." Uncle Chen on the side smiled contentedly in their direction, nodded in agreement, and said, "Growing up together since childhood, we naturally get close." I don't know what Lin Jiahui said, but Chen Mo's dark eyes coldly glanced at Bai Li, filled with annoyance. Bai Li was speechless for a moment when he was looked at, and a faint voice came in his ear again. "It seems that this handsome guy is also from the princess's group, ah." His cousin frowned and looked at Bai Li sympathetically, with unfinished cake cream hanging from the corner of her mouth. Bai Li silently took a napkin, handed it to his cousin, and pointed to his mouth. "Cream." "Ah." My cousin lowered her head and rubbed randomly, afraid that she would ruin her first impression in front of handsome Junjun. Whether it was the inexplicable look in his eyes or his cousin's series of affectations, Bai Li found it ridiculous and endured it until he couldn't laugh out loud. The banquet was exquisite and delicious, with many dishes that Bai Li had never seen before, let alone tasted. Bai Li, who loves food, only wanted to focus on eating, and had nothing to do with anyone. Moreover, this so-called handsome guy is probably red-green color blind, and green objects may not be recognizable. Li, Chen Mo, and Jiahui are both studying at Xingxian Middle School, and you will be classmates in the future. Lin Jijing's words almost choked Bai Li, who was all focused on dining. Cough. She knew that Lin Jijing would arrange for her to enter Xingxian Middle School, and her mother had already mentioned it. Unexpectedly, the princess and her bamboo horse were still in the same class as her. Going home and going to school is not good news that brings joy. Before Bai Li could react, Lin Jiahui was the first to complain, "Dad, is she also in our international class? Can she keep up?" Xingxian Middle School is the best middle school in this city, and the international class is also the top-rated class with top-notch teachers. So, in the future, you and Chen Mo should take more care of Bai Li. After calculation, she should be a few months older than you, your sister. "I don't have a sister," Lin Jiahui slammed her chopsticks onto the chopstick pillow. Qin Liangsheng reached out to take Lin's arm and said in a warm voice, "It's only a few months old. What about sisters and sisters? Besides, they are not familiar with each other. It will be better if they become familiar with each other in the future." Lin Jijing stabilized his figure and gently looked at Qin Liangsheng before saying, "Li has just gone, so there may be some unfamiliarity or academic problems. Chen Mo, you study well and help more in your daily life." There wasn't much intense reaction this time, and a dull could be considered a reply. Bai Li let out a deep sigh in her heart. She didn't even want to transfer to another school, but her previous school was too far away from here and she probably needed to live there. She couldn't trust her mother to be alone, so she chose to accept this arrangement. Moreover, her mother also regarded this arrangement as Lin Jingjing's dedication to her. Thinking of this, Bai Li cleared her throat and once again revealed her cute white tiger teeth. "Thank you, Uncle Lin, for taking the trouble to arrange it," she said. Lin Jijing nodded in satisfaction to Bai Li, who was well-mannered and polite in her speech, and greeted her to have a good meal. Bai Li sat down with a smile, slightly calmed down, and looked at the tender beef tenderloin in front of him. He forcefully picked it up and stuffed it into his mouth, chewing it fiercely. Eat more to have the strength to live well in this luxurious house. Chapter 2. The Mind Machine Stepdaughter. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After a harmonious and official meal, fortunately after finishing, Lin Jijing went into the study with Chen Mo's father for a chat. Lin Jiahui, who was full of Chen Mo's brother, naturally didn't stay long and didn't know where she had gone. There are many servants in the Lin mansion, and Qin Liangsheng no longer needs to clean up leftovers, wash dishes, and organize tedious household chores like before. She led Bai Li to the room on the west end of the third floor of the main building, which belonged to Bai Li's bedroom. She carefully sorted out the luggage brought by Bai Li. Bai Li doesn't have much luggage because she always wears school uniforms and doesn't pay much attention to them. Therefore, she doesn't have many daily clothes, mostly various books and thick exercise books. Qin Liangsheng looked at his daughter who was organizing books, and his heart felt sour. For the past 18 years, her daughter has been living in domestic violence, but at a young age, she has always defended herself. Her mother has never given Bai Li a stable life like other girls. At an age of 18, like flowers, girls of the same age have countless beautiful dresses and clothes, various hair decorations, but look at their own daughter. She is so simple that she can't be more simple. She always wears a black headband with a high ponytail and a school uniform in her daily life. The dress I was wearing today was still Lin Jijing's custom cheongsam, and she insisted on asking the salesperson to choose a match for Bai Li. She also saw her daughter's dazzling side for the first time. Bai Li noticed his mother's emotions and leaned in front of Qin Liangsheng to make a playful face, smiling and saying, "Mom, today is your big day, don't be unhappy." Qin Liangsheng was amused by her, holding on to Bai Li's delicate hands and gently caressing them. He said in a soft voice, "Mom is sorry for you. I didn't let you live a good life before, and I made you suffer a lot along with you." Bai Li shook his head and carefully stroked the broken hair in front of his mother's forehead behind his ear. "Mom, it's all over, that person. I heard that he got into a drunken fight not long ago and injured him a lot. He will never enter our lives again. You and Uncle Lin should live well and enjoy your own happiness to the fullest. Don't worry about me, I've grown up now." Bai Li stared at a piercing scar behind Qin Liangsheng's ear, which had serious hyperplasia due to poor maintenance. Fortunately, he could cover it with his hair on a daily basis, so as not to reveal these shocking scars in front of people. That person is her biological father, and the scar on her mother's body was left from a drunken incident many years ago when she forcefully smashed down a stool. The reason is simple, it's just because the neighbor's son helped him pour a glass of wine, so he despised Bai Li's daughter countless times. At the moment the chair fell, Bai Li was tightly guarded by Qin Liang. As a young woman, she saw drops of blood trickling down her mother's head. At that moment, she thought she had lost the only person in the world who loved her. Since then, Bai Li no longer likes red and suffers from severe dizziness. Qin Liangsheng didn't notice Bai Li's gaze, with a smile on his lips. He nodded and said to himself, "Your Uncle Lin really cares about me, afraid of hurting me like this. He kept apologizing last night. He is really, I understand. Jiehui's congenital heart disease cannot be stimulated, and the time is still short. She can't fully accept us. As time goes on and we get along, I believe it will get better." Bai Li listened silently, her mind echoing the conversation she had heard before the meal. Lin Jiehui's unfinished words were stuck there, although she comforted herself that they were probably just angry words spoken by Princess Aojiao in a moment of anger. Qin Liangsheng saw Bai Li silent and thought she was still concerned about Lin Jiehui's behavior during meals. "Ali, I've wronged you. Don't blame her. With this illness in her womb, she's inevitably a bit temperamental. She lost her mother at a young age, and it's not easy." Bai Li grabbed Qin Liangsheng's hand and smiled slightly. His two little tiger teeth obediently revealed, "Mom, I won't mind. As long as she doesn't offend you, I won't care about her. Besides, what?" Qin Liangsheng asked curiously as he saw that his daughter had not finished speaking. "Besides, aren't I older than her?" "Let her be," Bai Li chuckled playfully. The mother and daughter chatted as usual. Bai Li saw that it was already late, so she urged her mother to go back to her room and pack her backpack for tomorrow's report to the new school. Only when she calmed down alone did Bai Li have time to take a good look at this bedroom that belonged to her. It is large enough to be even more spacious than the total area of the house she and her mother used to live in, with a separate bathroom, a small balcony, a spacious desk, a soft and comfortable princess bed, and a whole row of wardrobes. The clothes she brought herself were not even enough to fill one of the small cabinets. Just now, she didn't tell her mother the truth. What she didn't finish was actually, even though this place is luxurious, she knows very well that she doesn't belong here, and this place doesn't belong to her either. Bai Li pushed open the glass door leading to the balcony and walked slowly to the balcony. Tonight, the moon is bright and even the twinkling stars can be seen clearly. The height of the third floor is just right to see the lush canopy of trees, and further away, one can see the towering forests on the other side of the mountain. The warm breeze of summer nights gently sways the leaves. Bai Li looked up at the moon, thinking to himself that he needed to make his economy more independent as soon as possible. The short stories she wrote in her spare time earlier have been published on websites with good income, which is enough to cover her college expenses. But these are not enough to worry about myself and my mother. Thinking of this, Bai Li smiled helplessly. Perhaps due to a lack of security since childhood, she had developed a personality of being too independent, considering everything carefully, and leaving a way out in everything. Now, she and her mother are no longer living in the shadow of domestic violence. Now, their mother is loved by someone. Lost in thought, Bai Li didn't notice the people in the garden downstairs, staring at her. "Brother Chenemo, what are you looking at?" Lin Jiahui walked over with 2 cups of freshly squeezed juice and saw Chenemo, who was motionless, curiously following his gaze. Surprisingly, it's Bai Li. "It's nothing," Chenemo withdrew his gaze. Just now, the moonlight shone on the girl's blue dress, plated with a layer of silver light, as if it were an elf in the forest asking for the moon, and he accidentally looked away. But a daughter brought by a stepmother, how could she be an elf? She asked her dad to give her that room because I was on the 3rd floor, so she had to be on the 3rd floor as well. Dad was soft-hearted, and after listening to that woman's words, he packed it up and gave it to her. "You know, that room used to be where my mom and I studied together, and it had many memories for me." Lin Jiahui pouted in grievance, tears welling up in her eyes, as if she was truly immersed in memories of her deceased mother. Chenemo looked up at Bai Li again, but she remained motionless as she gazed at the moon and said in a deep voice, "You are Uncle Lin's only daughter. Anyway, he won't let them hurt you. But Dad is so busy, I have to face their mother and daughter at home, and also face that woman's daughter at school. Chenemo, can you come and see me more in the future? I'm afraid." Crystal clear tears fell down, and no one felt pity for them. Really? That's great. Lin Jiahui clapped her hands in excitement and looked up at the balcony where Bai Li had just stood, but now there was no trace. "I'm leaving now, you should go back to your room early to rest." Chenemo picked up his backpack, threw it behind him, and walked out of the courtyard without looking back. "But Uncle Chen hasn't left yet," Lin Jiahui exclaimed anxiously. "Can you help me tell him? Chenemo is walking alone on his way home, and his home is also in this community, Building 13. It only takes a few minutes to walk there." He walked to the door and stopped in front of the grand iron gate. Does every family like them have to endure a woman brought by a father under the same roof? Chenemo leaned against the street lamp, looked up at the solitary moon, and silently thought. Chapter 3. Are you a dog? You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The next morning, just as it was dawn, Bai Li woke up early, changed into sportswear, and prepared to run and exercise around the estate. This has always been her habit, but she got up earlier today. Bai Li did a simple warm-up and went out to jog around the estate. The entire estate is built against the mountain, facing the mountains and surrounded by forests and bamboo seas. Along the mountain trend, each villa area is separated by high walls, with strong privacy and no human traffic, let alone pungent car exhaust. It can be said that the green plants are dense, the environment is quiet, and the birds sing in the secluded mountains. This made Bai Li very happy. She felt that every breath seemed to be breathing in the fresh oxygen that the plants had just produced. Compared to running along the road before, the air was not even a speck fresh. However, the slope of the estate road was obvious, which was much more tiring than running on flat ground in the past. Bai Li breathed heavily and looked at the time, intending to take a leisurely walk in the estate. He accidentally discovered a beautiful artificial lake on the west side of the estate and walked towards the center of the lake along the wooden plank road built on the lake. The uniquely shaped pavilion in the center of the lake stood in the center, where he could rest. The pavilion is exquisitely built, with 2 floors. Bai Li spun around one floor and walked up the rotating wooden ladder, faintly hearing someone reciting the British news of the day in a standard British accent. She listened carefully to the reading, which was exactly the same as what she heard when she ran, but the tone of her voice was better than her. Curiosity drove Bai Li up to the 2nd floor. At a glance, Bai Li saw a boy standing in a corner of the pavilion, wearing a black headband and slightly wet hair. He was dressed in a dark blue sportswear, probably just finished exercising, with his back to her, facing the lake, and focused on retelling the content of his earphones. The boy didn't notice her appearance at all, and Bai Li vaguely felt that her back was somewhat familiar, unable to figure out who it was for a moment. She thought for a moment and felt uneasy. Just as she was about to go downstairs, she accidentally stepped on the sawdust scattered by the stairs, making a crisp sound. The boy only heard the sound and turned his head to look at each other. Bai Li finally saw clearly, no wonder he looked familiar. It was Chen Mo, the boy in yesterday's school uniform. Sorry to bother you. Bai Li politely apologized for disturbing others' studies. Chen Mo did not respond and looked at her with a pair of pale ink-colored eyes that were indifferent. Bai Li thought to himself, is it because people like them are accustomed to looking at people with their eyes fixed on them, thinking that saying a word is a gift? She turned around without hesitation and went downstairs directly. Wait a moment. Chen Mo's voice came from behind, but the tone was very different from when he had just memorized it, with a hint of indifference. Bai Li paused and turned his head to look at Chen Mo, who was gradually approaching, through the railing in confusion. Chen Mo looked down at Bai Li several steps down and said coldly, since you have achieved class transition through your mother, cherish what you have and don't have any unnecessary delusions or greed. The speaker was tall, and the height difference, combined with the height difference of the steps, made Bai Li have to look up at him. The sunlight shone through from behind him, and his once cold and handsome face was now blurred. She lowered her eyes and sneered, picking up the steps to face Chen Mo. What do you belong to? Chen Mo hesitated for a moment, not knowing what Bai Li was asking. What zodiac sign am I asking you? Tiger, Chen Mo replied. I thought you were a dog. Bai Li raised his eyebrows and stared at Chen Mo. What? Chen Mo furrowed his brow slightly, but the next second he understood Bai Li's meaning. She was scolding him for meddling. Dogs take mice, mind your own business. I know you're very angry now, but I advise you to wait a moment. Bai Li looked at Chen Mo's cold and puzzled face and instantly turned into a frowning and angry expression, offering words of comfort. She lifted her head slightly and coughed lightly. First, in what capacity are you saying these things to me, good friend? Or are you the guardian of the proud princess? Bai Li didn't wait for Chen Mo to answer. He waved his hand and continued, secondly, I guess in your eyes, Lin Jiahui's health was not good from a young age, and she lost her mother at a young age. When you saw my mother and I enter this house, your preconception in your heart was that she would be the object of bullying. But I tell you, the eyes given by heaven are for seeing the truth of all things in the world, not for subjective speculation with closed eyes. Thirdly, my mother and I have never had any so-called greed towards this family. It doesn't matter whether you believe it or not. But next time you talk to me in a tone that belittles my mother and me, don't blame me for being impolite. After speaking, Bai Li didn't give Chen Mo a chance to speak and turned around to leave downstairs. She spoke harshly, but in reality, she couldn't do anything about him. I couldn't help but shake my head and sigh inwardly. Despite having such a beautiful skin and brain, my mind was not functioning properly. I also had those eye-catching eyes, but unfortunately, I couldn't distinguish between red and green. Chen watched as Bai Li walked further and further away, recalling the way he had been calmly and seriously questioned earlier. His tall and slender figure was imposing, which made him feel somewhat amused. Today, he was educated by a girl, and you should know that no one has ever spoken to him like this since childhood. Even just now, she even teased him. Just now, he was reckless. Bai Li was no longer in the mood to enjoy the beautiful scenery of the manor on his way home. He ran back home and found that his mother Qin Liangsheng had already prepared breakfast with her own hands. When she washed up and changed into her school uniform and went downstairs, she saw Lin Jiehui getting angry. "I don't want this, it tastes bad. Aunt Feng, please make me another sandwich that I usually eat." The servant named Aunt Feng quickly ran to the kitchen to work, leaving Qin Liangsheng with an awkward expression on his face. Bai Li frowned and pretended to ask loudly, "Mom, what's so delicious? It smells so good." I also want to know what delicious food Liangsheng has made. It smells so delicious and makes my mouth water, right? Xiao Li. Bai Li didn't hear Qin Liangsheng's reply, but behind him came the deep voice of a middle-aged man. Lin Jijing strode past Bai Li's body with great strides, naturally and affectionately caressing her head like an elder. Bai Li was momentarily frozen in place. From childhood to adulthood, no male elder had ever spoken to her so intimately, gently caressing her head. She stared at the man walking across the long walnut table to his mother, took her hand, half embraced her and walked to the other side of the table. She sniffed the hot soup noodles placed in front of her, picked up chopsticks, picked up a large pile of noodles, blew them, ate them, nodded with satisfaction, and the mother sitting beside him was smiling like never before. At that moment, her eyes were slightly moist, she sat down silently, slowed down her breathing, and prevented tears from really flowing down. She understood what her mother had said about happiness now, just like at this moment, a warm stream flowing through the already dried-up field in her heart. Lin Jijing ate all the hot noodles in soup and drank it clean. After finishing the meal, Lin Jijing arranged for the driver to escort Bai Li and Lin Jiehui to the school. At the grand entrance, Lin Jijing and Qin Liangsheng stood close to each other, waving goodbye, and the scene was warm and harmonious. However, the two people sitting together in the back of the car ignored each other and looked out the window at the scenery. When the vehicle took the first turn from the residential area, Lin Jiehui ordered the driver to pull over and stop. She pointed angrily at Bai Li beside her and said, "You, get off the car. No lower." Bai Li leaned his back against the backrest of the back seat and adjusted to a more comfortable position. "What are you saying? Not down." Bai Li turned his head to look slightly surprised at Lin Jiehui and calmly replied. "Do you want to go to school with me and make them think you're also my dad's daughter? Don't think about it, you think my dad is really good to you, but in fact." Lin Jiehui paused. Bai Li frowned, his eyes sharp, and asked, "What is it?" "It's just the woman my dad likes now." Lin Jiehui was startled by Bai Li's serious expression, paused, and stuttered in response. Bai Li stared at Lin Jiehui and said to the driver, "Please drive to the nearest subway station and drop me off there." The driver hesitated and turned to look at Lin Jiehui's expression. Bai Li said directly, "If you don't want your classmates to know about our relationship on the first day, let the driver do as I said." "Are you threatening me? Do you believe that I can have someone throw you down now?" "Of course, you can give it a try, but I won't go to school after getting off the car. If I go straight home, would Uncle Lin personally take me to school?" Bai Li yawned and shrugged casually. Lin Jiehui angrily kicked the driver's seat in front of her and loudly said, "What are you waiting for? Go to the subway station." The driver finally received the order, quickly started the vehicle, and arrived quickly and smoothly. Bai Li put on his backpack and got off the car. The car door behind him would not close, and Lin Jiahui's cold voice came out. "Remember to go to school, don't tell others about our relationship, otherwise you will bear the consequences." Bai Li had no psychological support for her, and enduring it until now was her greatest limit. If she continued, she was afraid that Lin Jiahui would suffer from heart disease on the spot and walked straight into the subway station without looking back. At this moment, a white Rolls-Royce passed by their vehicle, and Chen Mo in the car frowned slightly as he watched the stubborn figure walking towards the subway station from the car. Perhaps this girl is really different from what he thinks. Chapter 4. Coco Cute. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. The subway entrance is not far from the school. After getting off the subway, it takes about 5 minutes to walk to the school gate. This is a 12-year school from elementary school to high school, covering an area approximately 5 times larger than the previous school area in Bai Li. Not only is the entrance very imposing, but the campus is also lined with buildings. Bai Li stood in front of the school road map, carefully studying the route and identifying the names of the buildings, and found that the high school department was about 20 minutes away from her location. She suddenly felt that she could reduce her exercise in the morning and probably have to run for this distance in the future. When she gasped for breath and found the entrance of the department head's office, the bell for class just rang. She met the department head with a serious expression and black-framed glasses as they were about to leave. "Hello, Director, I'm here to report." Bai Li tried his best to calm down and stood upright. The head of the department lifted his glasses and looked up and down. "Oh, are you Bai Li, who was notified by the principal to transfer to the international class?" "Yes, Director. I'm quite good at getting stuck." Bai Li followed the director into the office and watched as the head of the department picked up the file bag on the table, pulled it out, and casually flipped through 2 pages. You used to be the top student in your school's department." "Yes. First there, not necessarily here. Our students' learning quality will be much higher. Try your best to keep up. If you can't keep up, you will apply to withdraw from this class yourself." The head of the department picked up the phone and solemnly notified the other party to come over. Then there were Bai Li and the head of the department, face to face, speechless and awkward, making time long. Fortunately, the person on the phone just now was not slow, and soon heard a knock on the door. The chubby male teacher, who was also wearing glasses and had wheat-colored skin, was granted permission and walked briskly in. "Director, you're looking for me." The man glanced at Bai Li standing aside. "Well, this is Bai Li, in your class from now on." The head of the department pushed his glasses and pointed at Bai Li. The man grinned, his pure white teeth particularly prominent against the wheat-colored skin. He walked up and picked up Bai Li's file, flipped through it, and said, "Okay, Director, I'll make arrangements later, so I'll take her away." The head of the department didn't speak and nodded, which was considered agreement. So, Bai Li followed this seemingly honest homeroom teacher, but she always felt that the clever and cunning homeroom teacher was walking towards the international class. "My surname is Wang Bo, and I will be your future homeroom teacher. You can call me Teacher Wang in the future, but those little kids can call me Old Wang from behind." "Old Wang is also okay, but don't add, right?" Teacher Wang turned around and said to Bai Li. "Okay, Teacher Wang." Bai Li pursed her lips tightly and suppressed a smile. "Well, I'm quite obedient. Those who can enter the international class either have excellent academic performance or advanced relationships and excellent academic performance. I just looked at your profile, and considering that you can still transfer at this time, I hope you have connections and abilities. Our progress is relatively fast, probably much faster than your previous school. We will arrange exams in the next 2 days, so you can experience it." Bai Li followed honestly and nodded in response. In no time, the two of them arrived at the door of the class. Teacher Wang coughed and the noise inside suddenly quieted down from the beginning. Teacher Wang walked to the podium and gave a brief introduction. He casually pointed to Bai Li and said, "Here, you can sit there." Bai Li followed the finger and saw that it happened to be in front of Chen Mo. He was in the last row, and that position was in the second to last row. She vaguely heard her classmates whispering in the classroom, "She sat in front of the Ice Mountain Demon King Chen Mo. Isn't he the one who hates having someone in front the most?" Lin Jiahui wanted to sit there, but he didn't even agree. What's the solution? That's the only available seat. Despite whispering, a few words still entered Bai Li's ears. TSK. Has Chen Mo been called the Iceberg Demon King by his classmates behind their backs? The iceberg fits perfectly, Demon King. Did the Demon King get scolded by himself this morning? Bai Li, who had just arrived, had no choice but to follow the arrangements and couldn't help but complain about the narrow path of her enemies. She heard Lin Jiahui's voice, which was not particularly loud, say, "Teacher Wang, I am applying to change seats with a new classmate." Bai Li stopped in an instant and looked at the homeroom teacher with a hopeful expression. "You should know that Lin Jiahui is in the third row, an excellent seat for listening to the class." Teacher Wang pushed his glasses and his wise eyes gestured for Bai Li to continue sitting, as if he had not heard Lin Jiahui's request. After arranging everything properly, Teacher Wang walked straight away. Lin Jiahui was stunned for a moment and unwillingly chased after him. Is it possible to leave at will in this class's discipline? Bai Li ignored the scrutiny of her surroundings. Oh no, it was the anticipation of the annual drama-like gaze swirling between her and Chen Mo. Unfortunately, the drama they were hoping for was not released, and the so-called Ice Mountain Demon King Chen Mo never even looked up from beginning to end. There's no objection, how could it be? Isn't Lao Wang running so fast because he's afraid he won't agree? There was another murmur of discussion. Bai Li didn't have the heart to pay attention to these troubles. She lowered her head and sorted out the textbook materials she had just received. It was only just now that she realized that teaching here is basically not based on books and textbooks, but mostly on the textbook materials edited by the school itself. The large, internal materials, strictly prohibited from external dissemination, on the cover of each material are printed in bold and deepened in the center of the cover. She carefully examined the content of the materials and found that they were basically summarized according to the knowledge points and related types of questions. She was very engrossed in reading and did not care about the whispers of others. "Hello, new classmate. My name is Sun Kiki, let me meet you." The classmate in front of Bai Li turned around and said hello. "Hello, Bai Li." "Bai Li, what a beautiful name. Which school did you transfer from?" "Third middle school," Bai Li replied. "Third middle school, barely a priority, how are you studying?" Sun Kiki stared at Bai Li with a curious and hopeful expression. "Not bad." "Sun Kiki, do you really want the new one to replace you as the last one?" A male classmate next to Bai Li spoke up first, then raised his eyebrows and waved his hand to greet Bai Li. "My name is Guan Shu, Guan Zhong's Guan, maths number." Bai Li nodded and smiled lightly in response. "What's wrong?" "My score, which is the last one, must also be among the top few in the third high school department." "Let me ask what's going on." Sun Kiki rolled his eyes at Guan Shu, who honestly buried his head in the pile of books again. "Don't pay attention to him, he's a math lunatic who always scores perfect in math. He's a typical mechanical brain with negative emotional intelligence, extremely annoying." It seemed like he was going too far, and Sun Kiki stuck out his tongue, then leaned over and stared at Bai Li. "You're really good looking, that kind of grand and bright looking." "Like which plain-faced celebrity?" Sun Kiki exclaimed, turning around and winking at the front seat. "Lin Jiahui's class flower title is not guaranteed." Bai Li smiled slightly in the face of such straightforward praise, and was caught by Sun Kiki, who turned back again. "Wow, I thought you were an iceberg beauty. When you smile, look at your curved eyebrows and sparkling eyes. How could it be said in the book of songs that a beautiful smile is beautiful, and beautiful eyes look forward to it? It's still something that ancient people would describe as a beauty. Bai Li's smile deepened upon hearing this, but he still stopped speaking and asked, "Classmate, I just heard the bell for class, why didn't I see the teacher?" "Call me Sun Kiki, or you can call me Coco." "Coco. That's right. We will have an exam in 3 days, so there won't be any teachers giving lectures in these 2 days. It's all self-study, but usually there won't be because the teacher has already explained the parts we need to review countless times. If the teacher is here, at most, they will explain new question types or unexpected tricky questions." "How many rounds have you reviewed?" Bai Li was surprised, as she had only just started the second round of review at her original school. "How many rounds? I don't know how many times I have reviewed." At this stage, everyone is probably working on their weaker areas. Some of them have already been recommended not to review. Sun Kiki tilted his head for a moment and replied. Bai Li remained silent. Although her self-arranged review progress was much faster than the original school, now it sounds like she is a bit behind here. She now understood the meaning of the department head sentence, "Try your best to follow." Having changed the environment and gained a long-lost sense of urgency is also a good thing, Bai Li thought to himself. So, is the top student in this class? Of course. Sun Kiki pouted and nudged behind Bai Li. "Look, there's the cold and indifferent academic bully sitting behind you. They all call him the Iceberg Demon King privately because he's cold and abnormal, the top student in science, and even refused to be admitted." He also felt embarrassed and touched his nose bridge, chuckled, "I'm in front of you, the 33rd in the department, the last in the class, hee hee." Chapter 5. Brushing his card. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Upon hearing this, Bai Li suddenly felt like she was the meat slice sandwiched in the middle of a hamburger. A concrete hamburger flashed through her head, and she couldn't help but lower her head and laugh. "What are you laughing at?" Sun Kiki asked in confusion, "But you smile more, I like to watch." "It's nothing, how many people in the whole class are there?" Bai Li asked with a smile. There were originally 29 people, but now you're here, a total of 30 people, Sun Kiki thought for a moment and replied. "Classmate, are you wondering why the 33 members of the department are still here?" The boy named Guan Shu once again stretched out his head from the book, trying to join the conversation with a yawning expression. Just before the round head was exposed for a few seconds, it was hit straight by Sun Kiki's flying book, and only a mournful cry could be heard. Sun Kiki snorted angrily and leaned over to whispered, "Hee hee, our family is a medical family, and I didn't necessarily get into this class. However, the principal and his family are all taken care of by my family, so I wasn't kicked out as the last one. This is not a secret, the class knows it, but the rumors are even more outrageous, so some of them are not willing to play with me. I'm not rare either. Would you like to play with me? If I am willing, I will treat you well." Sun Kiki extended his round head and leaned over, with short hair hanging obediently behind his ears. His bright eyes looked eagerly at Bai Li. Bai Li was momentarily surprised by the straightforwardness of her front desk, and upon closer inspection, Sun Kiki looked like a kitten, proudly seeking to touch it. She couldn't help but laugh and nodded solemnly. Sun Kiki's eyes lit up instantly, and he quickly agreed to have lunch together. He patted his chest as a tour guide for Bai Li, helping her familiarize herself with the school environment. In no time, Lin Jiahui returned to the classroom and obediently sat in her original seat, neither angry nor angry. Bai Li took a glance and realized that the homeroom teacher was extraordinary. She could make Princess Aojiao so obedient, without making any noise. Bai Li calmed down and reorganized his thoughts. He opened the review notes he had previously organized, combined with newly issued materials from the school, and began to focus on reviewing and filling in any gaps. I just learned about Sun Kiki's score during a chat. Based on past exam results, I don't think he's at the bottom, but he's not at the top either. He's probably at an average level in this class. If we consider the difficulty dimension of the exam again, it will be difficult to estimate. But Bai Li was not in a hurry to catch up with the progress. Instead he calmed down and reorganized his review strategy. Immersed in her studies, Bai Li didn't feel the passage of time at all until Sun Kiki knocked on her table and asked her to go eat. The school has a dedicated cafeteria for high school use, with 3 floors and a rich variety of dishes, including Chinese and Western cuisine, Japanese and Korean cuisine, with almost no queuing phenomenon. There are enough windows here, providing enough choices. Auntie Xingkai is not trembling and provides enthusiastic service. She actively greets students who will be heading to the exam room in a few months, fearing that they may not have enough to eat. Sun Kiki led Bai Li back and forth between various windows, introducing various delicious foods he usually likes. Finally, he stopped at a window and smiled, saying, "I have a Chinese stomach. I often have diarrhea when eating Japanese cuisine. Grandfather said I have spleen and stomach deficiency and cannot eat raw food. This covered rice is not expensive and super delicious. Let's have this today." Bai Li nodded with a smile, and when Sun Kiki finished ordering and paying, she remembered that her meal card had not yet been processed. "Bai Li, I ordered this for you. It's super delicious, you must try it," shouted Sun Kiki as he hurriedly walked towards the dessert area, carrying his own rice. Bai Li didn't have time to stop, and the cafeteria lady had neatly prepared the food and placed it at the window. "Auntie, I haven't processed my meal card yet." "I'm sorry, I don't want it for now," she said with embarrassment. "Didn't I get my meal card?" "Which class are you from?" "High school senior international class." "International class. New here, isn't that your classmate behind you? You can borrow him first and repay him later." "Behind me?" Bai Li turned around and realized that there was a person standing 1 meter behind him. It was none other than Chen. Silently, hands in pockets, looking down at her in silence. She took a glance and turned around, thinking to herself that after dealing with this person this morning, how could she help her if it wasn't even time to laugh at her now? Just as she was thinking about it, she saw an arm rubbing against her ear and reaching out to place the meal card at the payment counter. With a beep, the card swiped out. A cold and indifferent voice rang from above. "Auntie, I want the same one." "Okay, I know you have to come today." It seems that he is quite familiar with the aunt in the cafeteria. Bai Li was somewhat surprised and stood still, waiting for Chen to pay his share before picking up the plate to stop him. Chen frowned slightly and looked at her impatiently. Bai Li pointed to the plate and said, "Thank you for that. I'll pay you back later." "No need. I just don't want to wait." After speaking, Chen bypassed her and walked towards a separate private room in the restaurant. It turned out that Bai Li was accusing her of wasting time, and he laughed angrily. "Haha. How did this person make kindness radiate with disgust? Bai Li, here." Upon hearing the call, she turned around and saw Sun Kiki waving happily at her from the window. "Hey, do you know Chen?" She didn't sit down when she heard Sun Kiki ask. "I don't really know each other." "I don't know. Did you stop him just now?" "Because I haven't processed my meal card yet, he helped me swipe it," Bai Li replied honestly. "Ah. Why didn't you tell me?" "I'll help you brush it," Sun Kiki scratched his head. "It's my fault. After ordering, I went to buy coffee and forgot to ask you." But why did Chen suddenly become so kind-hearted? Sun Kiki pushed one of the 2 newly purchased coffees to Bai Li and said, "Here, please try it. It's very helpful for refreshing in the afternoon, but it's a bit bitter." Bai Li smiled and took it over. "It's okay, I forgot too." She looked up at the private room in the corner of the restaurant and asked, "Do you still have a private room in the student restaurant?" "Well, yes, there are only 1 or 2 rooms on each floor, but we can't use them." Only people like Chen and Lin Jiahui can dine there. Why? Because their families have all invested money in this school. You didn't know when you first came. There are many places in the school where their families have sponsorships. Sun Qi's mouth was stuffed with food, like a squirrel storing winter food. His speech was unclear, and Bai Li saw that her mouth was covered in soup. He reached out to pick up a tissue and handed it to her. He, if I were at home, I would be like this eating person, and I would have to make my dad interrupt his hand and not let him eat at the table for a few days. Sun Qiqi wiped his mouth and smiled foolishly, but for some reason, when I saw you, I thought we would be friends. Oh, after drinking my coffee, you became my Sun Qi's friend. Bai Li smiled and nodded. Bai Li, who had never had any friends before, thought she wouldn't have any friends here. Now it seems that perhaps she has her first friend. Returning to the classroom, Bai Li took out 20 yuan in cash from her wallet and pressed it under Chen Mo's book. She asked Sun Qiqi for the analysis notes of question types that she had some doubts about in the morning, and also asked for a copy of their exam paper from the last time. She tried timing the simulated exam on her own. Chen Mo, who came back from his lunch break, saw the 20 yuan money pressed under his book. He held it in his hand and studied it for a while. His well-defined fingers slowly smoothed it out and sandwiched it between the pages of the book he had been reading in his hand. Chapter 6. Physical Examination for Blood Dizziness. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Bai Li and Lin Jiahui have reached some tacit understanding on going to school. Every day, they play the drama of the two sisters going to school in harmony. In fact, every morning, the driver will send Bai Li to the subway station first, and then Lin Jiahui to school. Bai Li readily cooperated and was willing to accept. After all, this not only reassured his mother but also made him feel at ease, killing two birds with one stone. After school, Bai Li would study at school for a period of time and only return home very late. Unexpectedly, she would see Chen Mo helping Lin Jiahui with her homework in the living room every time. However, every time she came back soon, Chen Mo would leave, regardless of how Lin Jiahui tried to persuade her to stay. This once made Bai Li think that she was the clock for their tutoring class, and as soon as she came back, it meant that the class bell rang. Of course, it is also possible that comrade Chen Mo simply holds grudges and does not want to share a space with her, but what should be done? She doesn't care. Every time she comes back, she can see a strong resentment in Lin Jiahui's eyes. Bai Li gave her a sly smile without any concern, and the exaggerated silent "class is over" mouth shape made Lin Jiahui angry but unable to vent her anger. Bai Li felt a sense of satisfaction in his heart. Look, Lin Jiahui, according to the law of conservation of energy, in the morning you were proud to let me go to school on my own, and in the evening you were angry because I came back. Bai Li quickly adapted to the rhythm of the new school and became a happy meal companion with Sun Qiqi. They ate through various windows in the cafeteria, and surprisingly, their tastes were surprisingly consistent. Hey, you know, we will have a physical examination tomorrow morning. Sun Qiqi put a piece of braised pork belly in his mouth. We will have the exam the day after tomorrow. How can we arrange a physical examination temporarily? Bai Li was puzzled. Is that right? I also find it strange that this school has more frequent physical examinations than other schools. Guan Shu approached with a plate in hand. Why did you sit over? Go aside. Sun Qiqi pushed the chair that Guan Shu was about to sit on with disdain. Why can't I? This is a public place, and besides, I'm not looking for you. I'm here to find Bai Li. Guan Shu quickly pressed down on the chair and sat down steadily next to Sun Qiqi. After spending a few days together, Bai Li has become accustomed to their way of getting along, making noise and adding a bit of joy to their busy studies. Bai Li coughed lightly and asked, is it frequent? What are the physical examination items? As far as I know, there are 3.4 more times a year compared to other schools. The medical examination is provided by the Lin family's private hospital for free to the school. The daily physical examination items are simple, such as blood sampling, height, weight, and vision. However, I heard that this time it seems to be a large-scale physical examination, with fasting blood sampling and CT scans, which are quite comprehensive. Don't say, the Lin family is really wealthy, and they donate all kinds of high-end medical equipment to the school. That medical building was originally funded by the Lin family. Sun Kiki said a lot, but it didn't delay rolling his eyes at the manager. Blood drawn. Bai Li stopped. She, who suffered from severe dizziness, is now beginning to feel dizzy. Well, yes, what's wrong? Sun Ke noticed that Bai Li's face was not very good. He reached out to probe Bai Li's forehead and muttered to himself, I didn't have a fever. It's okay, I'll go get some spicy stir-fried pork liver to supplement it. Bai Li took a few sips of ice water to calm himself, but his heart still pounded. Since learning about the need for a physical examination and blood drawing, Bai Li has been doing psychological construction for herself, forcing herself to not care and silently praying for a slower time. Unfortunately, time will not change according to anyone's will. Early the next morning, homeroom teacher Lao Wang had all the students gather in line, claiming to be the first to complete the physical examination and go back to review their homework earlier. Bai Li, who was at the end of the queue, tried to relieve his nervousness by tightly gripping his left tiger's mouth with his right hand, but the effect was minimal. His heart was racing and he had to ask his homeroom teacher for permission to go to the bathroom. Bai Li tried to pat his face with cold water to calm himself down, but his face looked pitifully pale in the mirror. She sighed and had to smoke sooner or later. Escaping was not a solution, but at worst, she fainted. She had experienced it before. Bai Li lowered her head and slowly walked back to the examination room, murmuring in a low voice that she was not afraid, constantly cheering for herself. She made a sudden turn and crashed into someone's arms without warning. Her hard chest made her dizzy, and her nose hurt. She looked up to question the other person, only to see Chen Mo frowning and looking down at her in surprise. Chen Mo just noticed that Bai Li, who was at the end of the queue, had a pale face. Generally, when queuing, girls were in front, and boys were behind. A girl was particularly eye-catching in the boys' queue, and later he heard Sun Kiki constantly looking for her. He thought he must be curious, which prompted him to leave the team and walk towards the bathroom. From a distance, he saw Bai Li walking towards him, feeling restless. He watched helplessly as Bai Li bumped into his arms, but did not dodge. When he realized it, he took a big step back with his long legs. Why don't you look at the road when walking? Chen Mo frowned as he stared at Bai Li's even paler face than before. Bai Li felt that Chen Mo's behavior of disdain was too obvious. She hadn't dodged it yet, but he, as a boy, avoided it first. He didn't treat her well, why didn't he dodge just now? I'm sorry, my eyes didn't grow on top of my head. I'm very sorry to bump into you. However, why didn't you see me dodge first? Bai Li rubbed his head, and now his previously dizzy head was making things worse. He angrily retorted and didn't want to entangle himself anymore. He avoided him and walked in a different direction. The direction is wrong, it's over here. Chen Mo felt angry and amused. Why does he rush towards him every time he hasn't said anything? At this moment, Bai Li seemed like a silly goose, walking unsteadily. The collision just now wasn't as serious, was it? Bai Li paused for a moment, secretly feeling embarrassed, and then turned around to return to the examination room one by one. When they returned, the rest of the class had already entered the next physical examination project. The homeroom teacher, Old Wang, saw the two of them returning from afar. Without much thought, he waved his hand to urge them to hurry up and followed the army to the next physical examination room. Bai Li pursed her lips and began to sweat on her forehead. She watched as the skilled nurse in front of her picked up the needle and said, "Nurse, I feel dizzy with blood." Blood sickness. Then don't turn your head and try not to look. The nurse spoke gently and moved gently, but unfortunately, Bai Li was still sensing the needle entering his body when he saw the dark red blood of his classmate who was drawing blood from the next seat. Nightmare-like memories of childhood swept through, with a sense of fear overwhelming the sky and black spots gradually occupying the view. Bai Li's last gaze remained on the nurse who hurriedly stood up, and then her gaze turned completely black. Based on past experience, she would faint on the ground and then fall into that bottomless abyss again. However, this time she clearly felt as if a pair of big hands were dragging her, with a warm and powerful touch. When she woke up again, Bai Li lay in the medical room next to the examination room, wearing an oxygen mask on her face. "Are you awake?" "That's great," Sun Kiki turned his head and shouted, "Old Wang, oh no, class teacher, Bai Li is awake." Classroom teacher Lao Wang came in at the sound, wiping the sweat from his forehead and panting heavily. "Oh, you scared me to death. You fainted so suddenly. Fortunately, Chen Mo held you back, otherwise you would have fallen straight to the ground. It's really amazing." "Who?" "Chen Mo." Bai Li felt much better. He took off his oxygen mask, sat up, and looked around. The person was not here. He would be so kind. Chen Mo picked you up and laid you flat in the medical room. How could the nurse touch you? Don't say anything, this kid usually looks indifferent, but he's quite enthusiastic in critical moments. He's quite reliable. Old Wang used his hand as a fan, panting. Old homeroom teacher, why are you talking? We Bai Li are so thin. Sun Kiki was unhappy. Class teacher Lao Wang nodded quickly and said, right. I used the wrong words. Sun Kiki, please stay here for a while. If there are no problems, just accompany her to complete the remaining projects and then return to class. Don't worry. After finishing speaking, Old Wang wiped his sweat and left in a frenzy. Bai Li, if you go back to class, stay away from Lin Jiahui. If that girl goes crazy, she's mindless. Sun Ku saw that the homeroom teacher had left and sat down by the bed, whispering. What's wrong? She was a person who fainted and just woke up. Who did she offend? Chapter 7. As you wish. You are listening at novelfull.audio. On the way back to the classroom, Bai Li finally understood. It turned out that she had no idea which student was vivid and embellished in front of many classmates, describing her collision with Chen Mo in the hallway and the heroic rescue of the medical examination room. Chen Mo asked them to say. Shouldn't he quickly distance himself from him, just like the big step he took in the hallway after seeing her clearly? After taking you to the infirmary, he didn't have time to return to class, did he? Bai Li tilted his head in confusion and looked at Sun Kiki, waiting for her to continue speaking. It is said that when I hugged you, I exerted too much force and twisted my hand. He should have been looking for the school doctor in the medical room just now. Sun Kiki helped Bai Li walk slowly. Well. For now, let's not mention the exaggerated performance of the previous classmates. It's just Chen Mo's brother who got injured, and Lin Jiahui probably waited for her at the class gate with her sword crossed. No mistake, as soon as I went upstairs, I saw Lin Jiahui holding her hands around her chest and glaring angrily. Perhaps the sunlight was too intense, casting a grand golden glow on Lin Jiahui, as if she was caught in flames all over her body. Sun Kiki instinctively stood in front of Bai Li. Bai Li lightly patted Sun Kiki, who was tense and defensive, and smiled, saying, you go back first. I'm fine now, you can rest assured. Sun Kiki had to leave first when he saw the situation. As he passed by Lin Jiahui, he coughed and said, we are all classmates. We need to love each other. Lin Jiahui, do you think? Lin Jiahui's white eyes rolled up to the sky, and her face was covered in what kind of nonsense she was saying. Then she waved her head, gesturing for Bai Li to follow her to the stairwell of the fire escape, a secluded and quiet place without surveillance cameras. As soon as Bai Li walked in from behind, Lin Jiahui turned around and slapped her. If she hadn't had the experience of avoiding being beaten since childhood, Bai Li might have been slapped. Bai Li dodged and quickly grabbed the tender arm like a lotus root. I feel that with just a little force, it will break. Bai Li was extremely angry, and the scene of being beaten by his father when he was a child once again flooded into his mind during the day. You don't think you can beat me, do you? Bai Li shook hard, and Lin Jiahui couldn't stand steadily. Her body shook, and her white and tender arm hit the wall with a loud, muffled sound, all red. If you have something to say, just leave. Although she has been loved by many since childhood, she has sworn to escape from that primitive demon cave and will never be bullied by anyone again, anyone. You. Do you know who you're talking to? Lin Jiahui frowned in pain and leaned against the wall with her injured arm. Ha! Bai Li chuckled and opened the fire door before leaving. I warn you, stay away from Brother Chen Mo. Lin Jiahui approached with a strange smile. Do you really think that the daughter of a container has flown onto a branch and become a phoenix? What are you talking about? What container? Bai Li grabbed Lin Jiahui's arm tightly. You speak clearly. Ha ha ha, you want to listen, but I won't say it, but Bai Li, I tell you, you can't take everything from me. Suddenly, Lin Jiahui felt pain and shouted loudly, biting the bleeding marks hard at the corner of her mouth. The corner of her mouth curled up with an evil charm, and she slowly lay out from the door, pretending to be pushed down. Her tearful hands covered her chest and shouted, Bai Li, you actually hit me. The originally empty hallway exploded in an instant, and when Bai Li walked out, he had already surrounded several classmates. Everyone was full of gossip. Some tried to help Lin Jiahui, but it seemed that her injuries were serious and she couldn't get up for a while. Some rushed out of the encirclement to report to the teacher, and more of them were watching the excitement. I hit you. Bai Li raised his eyebrows and asked, how did I hit you? It seems that the stage has been set up, she can't just leave like this. Classmates, she wanted to slap me, but luckily I reacted quickly and reached out to block it. I was just reminding her to pay attention to the school culture and discipline, but she didn't recognize good people's hearts and started hitting me. Lin Jiahui sobbed and was pitiful. She raised her arm that had just hit the wall, looked around the crowd, and then looked at the injured corner of her mouth, which was not appropriate as evidence of her injury. Bai Li approached her and saw clearly the faint and proud smile of Lin Jiahui. What she originally wanted to endure was for her mother. But seeing this green glowing object in front of me, I can't bear it anymore. Pa! The slap fell in response, and the crisp sound abruptly put an end to the surrounding noise. Lin Jiahui, who suddenly took a palm, almost hit her head on the ground. When she lifted her head again, her 5 fingerprints hung prominently on her face. The surroundings suddenly became quiet, and the onlookers took a deep breath together, unsure of what action to take. Lin Jiahui seemed to have been blinded, her sobs paused. The next second she reacted, she struggled to stand up in anger, wanting to reach out and fight back, but was still caught by Bai Li with one hand. You said I slapped you, and I did as you wished. How come I'm not happy? Bai Li stared at Lin Jiahui's fiery eyes and said coldly, your things are not rare to me. You should not act in front of me in the future, and your acting skills are not good. Lin Jiahui struggled to break free from Bai Li's restraint, while her other hand pulled out the hairpin from her hair and held it in her hand, intending to ambush and counterattack. All these small actions were visible to Bai Li. As the two of them drew their swords and opened their crossbows, they shouted, "Stop," from different directions in the corridor. The crowd automatically split into a slit, and the two speaking individuals quickly walked into the center of the event. At the moment Lin Jiahui saw Chen Mo, she almost burst into tears, Do Da's tears gushing out, much more heartfelt than just sobbing. Bai Li sighed inwardly, but in fact, her acting skills were pretty good. At least she had tears in her eyes, much stronger than those unremarkable celebrities. Brother Chen Mo, she hit me. Woo woo woo. Anger and injustice made Lin Jiahui blush from her neck. Chen Mo frowned and glanced at Bai Li holding Lin Jiahui's arm, whispering, "Let go first." Right, let go first, everyone else has dispersed. Class teacher Wang Bo waved his hand and beckoned the onlookers to return to their respective classes. Bai Li looked up at him. Chen Mo had a strong smell of medicine all over his body, and there was a long strip of ointment sticking to his right wrist. It must be the injury he suffered while helping her just now. She let go of her hand and dodged to the side. Lin Jiahui covered her chest, panting heavily, and exclaiming that her heart was uncomfortable, causing pain everywhere. "Can we go? Let's go." "I can't go. I need to see a doctor." Chen Mo supported Lin Jiahui, who was about to stand unsteadily, and leaned against the wall. He turned around and returned to the classroom, calling out two female classmates who were usually close to Lin Jiahui. "Take care of her, I'll go find the school doctor to come and see her first. If it doesn't work, I'll take her to the hospital. Brother Chen Mo, please help me call my dad and ask the driver to pick me up. I don't want a school doctor." Lin Jiahui was so wrong that she couldn't easily let Bai Li go. She must have caused a huge uproar. It's best for her dad to drive them out of the house. Chen Mo paused for a moment, looked back at Bai Li, and replied, "Okay." Quickly, a black Rolls-Royce drove straight into the campus and parked downstairs. Not only the driver, but also Lin Jijing and an accompanying doctor arrived. The three of them headed straight to the homeroom teacher's office. In the small office, there were still the principal and department heads standing, and homeroom teacher Wang Bo was sweating even more. He couldn't figure out why all the physical examinations kept coming up one after another. The school doctor focuses on observing Lin Jiahui's condition, measuring her blood pressure and pulse one by one. "How's it going, Hui Hui? Are you okay?" Lin Jijing hugged Lin Jiahui in his arms and carefully looked up and down. After discovering that there were no major issues, he waved his hand and asked the accompanying doctor for further examination. Bai Li watched coldly from the side, silently pondering in her heart where it would be suitable for her and her mother to stay if that family couldn't stay any longer. Now that she has enough money to rent a 2-bedroom, 1-living-room house to live in, it's not a big problem. Buying one is a bit lacking. She calmly met Lin Jijing's gaze, her heart ready for a roaring rebuke, and saw Lin Jijing ignore the polite greetings of the principal and department head as he walked towards her. Lin Jiahui, who was checking her body on the side, smiled smugly. Lin Jijing's phone rang at this moment. Chapter 8. My child. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The calls were very persistent, but after being hung up by Lin Jijing once, they came back one after another. As a last resort, Lin Jijing walked outside the office with his phone to answer the call. The head of the department took the lead in saying, "Teacher Wang, how can violent behavior still occur in your class? Is fighting and conflict something that should happen in our school?" Yes, no, I must carefully inquire about the cause of the matter, and pay more attention to strengthening education in the future. The homeroom teacher walked out from behind the principal, his broad and solid figure completely blocking Bai Li. Investigating what? Who hit who is not very clear. Education. Punish as you please. How are school rules written? The head of the department pushed his glasses, his expression wooden and serious. If it weren't for the deep and indistinct lines on her face, Bai Li might have thought she had used technology to be ruthless. Otherwise, her expression would have been so numb. From the first meeting until now, even the curvature of her teeth when speaking is the same. Yes, the director is right. However, Bai Li also sincerely admitted his mistake to me just now. Besides, how to handle it requires both parents to come together. Bai Li's parents haven't come yet, how can we still have both parents meet and communicate? Do you think so? Admit your mistake. She doesn't know. Meeting between parents of both parties. Bai Li understood. When she entered the school leaders were also unaware of her relationship with Lin Jiehui. In what capacity did she enter? Cough, if you want me to talk, let's listen to Teacher Wang's arrangement first. Lin Dong and the parents of this student are probably acquaintances. Let's communicate and discuss before we talk. The principal spoke slowly behind everyone. Bai Li understood that she was arranged to come in as Lin Jingjing's friend's child. Okay. Old Wang turned around and frowned at Bai Li. Bai Li, where are your parents? Bai Li didn't know how to answer, although she knew that Lao Wang was defending her. But how could she let her mother come to this particularly awkward scene? At this moment, Lin Jijing finished answering the phone and walked in, his footsteps becoming unusually light and agile. The low-pressure aura on Lin Jijing's body had already disappeared without a trace, and an indescribable smile even appeared on the corner of his mouth. The principal quickly stepped forward and said, Mr. Lin, we will take seriously the matter of Lin Jiehui's injury on campus. This student, look. Lin Jijing waved his hand and said, as a child, it's not worth making a big fuss for a moment of impulse. The doctor just said that Hui is not a big deal, so the school should not investigate. Besides, this child is not an outsider, he is also my child. We are a family. Also my child. A family. Bai Li was stunned in place, and Chen Mo, who had been hiding in the corner, looked up at Lin Jijing in surprise. The others in the office looked at each other in surprise. Dad! What are you talking about? How could she be your child? What kind of family? You promised me that you wouldn't tell the school. She hit me. Did you see that? What's wrong with you? Lin Jijing's reaction left her greatly disappointed. Lin Jiehui shouted hysterically, excitedly lying in front of Lin Jijing and pounding hard. Lin Jijing hugged Lin Jiehui and gently comforted her, arranged for the driver to start the vehicle, and signaled to the doctor to take Lin Jiehui away from her emotional state. Bai Li was unable to calm down for a moment, and everything went beyond expectations. Complex emotions accumulated in his chest, and he could not speak. It was clear that just now, there was going to be a storm. Xiaoli, do you want to come home with me? Lin Jijing walked up to Bai Li, half bowed and looked at her level. He asked her softly. Bai Li remembered many years later at the kind gaze in his shrewd eyes made her really think it was a long-lost father's love. The emotional gap in his heart that had been empty for a long time seemed to be filled. Bai Li instinctively shook his head and nodded again. In a daze, he followed behind Lin Jijing and got into the car. The vehicle started, and she saw Chen Mo with a long ointment sticking to it, silently staring at her from the side of the car. Suddenly, her mind was in chaos, thinking that she didn't seem to have time to say thank you. Upon returning home, Lin Jiehui broke free from the doctor's support and rushed straight back to her room, locking herself inside. Despite Lin's efforts to coax her, she refused to open it. The sound of things smashing kept coming from the room, and soon it turned into low cries. Lin Jijing was a bit anxious, afraid that Lin Jiehui's heart would not be able to withstand the huge emotional fluctuations. He asked the servant to bring the key and forcefully open it to enter. Qin Liangsheng saw the group rushing home, and Lin Jiehui was extremely emotional. She didn't know the reason, so she could only ask Bai Li. Bai Li then explained the situation in detail. Bai Li thought her mother would make her apologize, after all, she had actually touched. Unexpectedly, Qin Liangsheng hugged Bai Li and whispered, "Ali, you've been wronged. I know my child will never do it for no reason." Bang! The solid defense line built by Bai Li himself was shattered by the soft maternal love, and he lay on his mother's shoulder, tightly closing his eyes to prevent tears from flowing. After a while, Lin Jijing finally came down from upstairs. Qin Liangsheng followed closely and asked softly, "Salute, is Jiehui okay?" "It's okay, the child has a bad temper, it'll be over in a while." Lin Jijing picked up his teacup and took a big sip. Probably it took a lot of effort just now to calm Lin Jiehui's anger. "Liangsheng, didn't it scare you?" He placed his hands on Qin Liangsheng's shoulders and pressed them, asking softly as if to appease him. No, Jiehui's health is important. How about I go up and take care of her tonight?" Qin Liangsheng, who was originally worried about Lin Jijing's scolding, was melted by his gentle care. "No need, there's a family doctor here." Later, Lin Jijing waved and called Bai Li over. "I guess it's likely that Hui did something that made you angry, so I asked you to take action." "Uncle, you just educated her. I'll apologize to you first." "Don't blame her, okay?" Lin Jijing's words were sincere and sincere. He did not accuse her of hurting his biological daughter without reason, and he apologized to her seriously without any intention of asking her to apologize. He kindly made Bai Li feel lost. "This is a far cry from my biological father who curses loudly and kicks and punches without saying a word." The safety line set by Bai Li for the Lin family at the beginning is gradually being dismantled, and he is caring for his mother's emotions at the first time and also accommodating himself. All of this was beyond Bai Li's expectations. What about letting his stubborn and overbearing daughter divide her into 3 parts? As long as Lin Jiehui doesn't go too far, she will avoid further disputes in the future. Bai Li glanced at his mother and said seriously, "Uncle Lin, I also have something wrong. I'm sorry to trouble you." Lin Jijing smiled and rubbed Bai Li's head, "As long as your mother and daughter are here. Well, just live a good life together as a family." After speaking, he rubbed his hands with a happy mood, as if he had solved something big, and called for butler Lu to bring wine over. Lu, the butler, quickly brought over the wine and asked with a smile, "Master, it's been a long time since I've had a drink. Why did the wine bug come out today? There is something happy to celebrate today. Everyone here is said to be inexplicable. What kind of grievance has their daughter suffered? There are even happy things worth drinking and celebrating. Lin Jijing, who has always loved her dearly, is acting strangely today, which is hard to see. That old man, I'll have the kitchen prepare the food now." Manager Lu reacted very quickly, without asking much or exploring, and turned to walk towards the kitchen. "The food is ready, please deliver it to the lady's room." "She probably won't come down at this moment," Lin Jijing ordered. "The dishes are exquisite and perfect for drinking." Lin Jijing almost indulges in a delightful mood while dining. Every sip of the wine is slowly consumed, savored carefully, and the pleasure seems out of place. However, no one will explore the reason for the inquiry, as it also seems out of place. After finishing the meal, Lin Jijing entered the study alone, locked the door, and the room was dim, leaving only a desk lamp to illuminate a corner of the desk. The desk was tidy, with only one medical report lying quietly there. Lin Jijing trapped himself in his seat, picked up the report and carefully examined it. Then he opened the first drawer on his right side, which contained a medical examination report, but it was a bit outdated. He solemnly presented 2 reports to a photo placed on the table, in which the woman had a gentle smile. Upon closer inspection, Lin Jiehui's appearance was extremely similar. Lin Jijing gazed affectionately at the person in the photo, gently caressing the surface of the frame with his hand. He murmured softly, "It's Rh negative with AB blood. Wife, our child is saved. Don't worry, no matter what the cost, I will definitely take good care of our daughter." Chapter 9. Chen Mo's Eccentricity. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Bai Li slept very restlessly that night, with a series of nightmares that made her wake up. Dreams were different, and when she woke up in a daze, she couldn't remember the details clearly. However, the painful feeling of losing something she loved in her dream was always clear when she woke up. As soon as a wisp of white appeared on the horizon, Bai Li got up and changed into clothes to go for a run. It was too early to leave today. When she finished running and came back, the cleaning lady in the estate had not finished yet. She pushed the tool cart up the road, making it extremely difficult. The slope of the road was steep, and the tool car rolled several times. The ant struggled to support it and was able to move forward with all her might. Upon seeing this, Bai Li quickly ran a few steps up and silently pushed hard behind the tool cart. It was really heavy, and there was also a complex smell of mold and foul smell that penetrated his nose. Along the way up the hill, although the two of them were also struggling, their aunt told her that it was actually a machine on a regular basis. However, yesterday the machine malfunctioned and had to be repaired at the factory. Today, manual labor had to be used. Unfortunately, another aunt in charge of the same area had a fever and took leave, which was why Bai Li smiled and said, "It's okay, auntie. I'll help you. My house happens to be on the highest point." Auntie spoke all the way, feeling bad, dirty, and sorry. Bai Li shook his hand and said he didn't mind, but the uphill road was unusually long due to this heavy object. Just as Bai Li's hands were sore and difficult to lift, the weight of the tool cart suddenly became lighter. Two arms with extremely smooth muscle lines appeared beside her, pushing the tool cart in the same position as hers. "Is that you?" Bai Li looked at Chen in surprise. Coincidentally, he also came out for a run so early. He was still wearing a dark blue sportswear, a black headband, and a few drops of sweat slid down his superior jawline. The sun shone through the crystal clear sky, emitting light. Chen remained silent and looked ahead. The tense muscle lines in his arms showed his strength, and the long patch of plaster on his arm was unusually obvious. Bai Li ignored his silence and said, "Are your hands okay?" "That. Thank you yesterday." Sure enough, words are as precious as gold, and people are as good as their names. Bai Li thought that she had already said thank you seriously. The two of them worked together to help Auntie deliver the toolbox to the parking space. As Auntie nodded and thanked her repeatedly, Chen turned around and took out his phone to call the property manager. In terms of property personnel arrangement, in case of special circumstances, personnel allocation cannot be properly carried out. I hope you can provide a solution to the director of the property management department this morning. The CEO Fan, who was running smoothly, finally remembered that the Lin and Chen families were the largest investors in this real estate. Auntie suddenly felt panicked and kept saying, "It's not the manager's business." "Oh, today is a special situation. Young man, don't let the manager write a review." "It's not a review, it's a solution." Bai Li knew very well that Auntie was actually afraid of the property manager scolding her, so she spoke out and comforted, "Auntie, don't worry, they are just discussing solutions, not blaming anyone." "Are you right?" Chen Mo's ink-colored eyes gave Bai Li a faint glance. If there is a dereliction of duty, there is naturally a need for criticism. After speaking, he turned around and walked away with ease. This young Master Chen, who is unaware of human suffering, is unaware that his words may affect a person's ability to lose their job. "Hello, young Master Chen, do you know that if you say this, the manager is likely to trouble Auntie?" Bai Li chased after him and said. "How could it be? It was his dereliction of duty at work. Can you try a different way? At least you can avoid making this phone call in front of your aunt." Bai Li sighed as he saw the people around him indifferent. "Forget it, it really doesn't make sense to you." He happened to walk to the entrance of the Lin mansion and pushed open the door, ready to go home. Cough. "Was everything okay when I went home yesterday?" Chen Mo's prominent Adam's apple rolled up and down unnaturally, completely different from his previous tone of speaking. "Don't misunderstand, I'm worried about Lin Jiahui's physical condition." Misunderstanding. What was misunderstood? "The family doctor said she's okay, don't worry," Bai Li said as she was about to close the door. "So. Uncle Lin. He's also very good, what's wrong? Bai Li looked at Chen Mo puzzled, not understanding what he was trying to say. Uncle Lin didn't lose his temper. Lin Jiahui suffered such a great injustice in public yesterday, and Lin Zhijing definitely wouldn't handle it calmly. Now Bai Li finally understood that it was an accident for Chen Mo. She was able to come out for a run today without being scolded severely and kicked out of the house. Around such a big circle, I didn't expect such a cool and handsome appearance to hide such a gossipy heart. No, why do you want to educate me for Uncle Lin, vent your anger for Lin Jiahui, or do you want to know why I wasn't kicked out of the house? Unfortunately, you're disappointed. I'll continue to live here well. Goodbye. With a bang, Bai Li forcefully closed the iron door and turned back home in hatred. Chen Mo's no, before he could say it out, he was completely shut down. Chen Mo was speechless as he faced the tightly closed Lin mansion gate for the first time. Just now, he saw her with bloodshot eyes and just wanted to know if she had been embarrassed last night. Chen Mo was so helpless that he was laughed at in anger. His worries were too much. This girl was too different from the people around him, like a cactus with extremely strong vitality, with thorns everywhere, and a careless one could be pricked. Chen Mo, who was lost in thought, felt the phone in his hand shake twice. He clicked on the message and saw that it was from Lin Jiahui, complaining why he didn't answer her call yesterday and why he didn't care about her grievances. Chen Mo thought for a moment and sent. Yesterday, I was also in the fire escape. At that time, he was on the previous floor where they were arguing. Just as he finished answering a phone call and was about to go downstairs, he happened to observe the entire process of the argument, which was not without excitement. Afterwards, he walked out from the other side of the exit. Bai Li noticed that today's Lin Jiahui was different from before, with a gloomy expression and a lack of control. She was completely lethargic and lifeless, and this morning it was rare for her mother Qin Liangsheng to not nitpick on the breakfast she had prepared. Later, it was heard that during the exam, she was also reminded by the invigilator to omit the name of the exam paper, and there were still some blank questions in the paper when it was submitted. These were all told to Lin Jiahui by Sun Kiki, who was in the same examination room as her. Sun Kiki exclaimed excitedly that with this blessing from Lin Jiahui, she is unlikely to be the last one. After all, she has answered everything. Bai Li, you were so awesome yesterday. No one has ever made Lin Jiahui lose face like this. Once upon a time, a classmate just had a few words with her, and soon this classmate transferred to another school. It's scary. Sun Kiki took a large piece of meat from Bai Li's plate and smiled foolishly. Bai Li, don't you eat it. Bai Li smiled and nodded, then gave her an extra piece from the plate. Don't you think I'm scary? When I entered the campus today, I heard two people calling me terrifying from behind, with a posture that they wished they could be 8 zhang away from me. Bai Li smiled and gestured a big distance with exaggerated hands. No, not afraid. Because I know it was Lin Jiahui who provoked you first. Sun Kiki blinked his starry eyes and stared at the remaining flesh of Bai Li. Bai Li pushed forward, gesturing for her to pick them all up. How can you be so sure? Because I heard the conversation between Chen Mo and Lao Wang. Just on your way to Lao Wang's office, I happened to come back from the bathroom. It's a pity that I didn't witness that exciting scene. No matter how wonderful they recounted to me, I felt almost amused. Chen Mo. What did he say? It's probably that he saw Lin Jiahui accidentally fall to the ground, and you didn't beat her in the passage, as if that's what he said. Did you hear me right? Bai Li was surprised that Chen Mo actually knew the truth. He was even more surprised that he would find his homeroom teacher to tell the truth. This morning, he still wished he could be blamed. Did I misunderstand him? Of course. But even if I didn't hear it, I believe you. Those guys are easy to be deceived. Lin Jiahui is not a good person. He always covers his chest and thinks he's a shisha. After saying that, Sun Kiki looked around and stuck out his tongue, whispering, you have to keep it down. My uncle is still working at her private hospital, and I can't cause trouble for him. Hey, I heard you. Guan Shu sat down next to Sun Kiki and deliberately shouted loudly, Sun Kiki, said Lin. Sun Kiki covered Guan Shu's mouth. Shut up. Bai Li was amused by the two of them and turned his head to see the figure of Chen Mo eating leisurely through the transparent glass in the private room. She seems to owe this person another thank you. It's not her fault either. Who made him say something strange and illogical in the morning? The person being watched seemed to have a sense, looking up right in front of Bai Li's 4 eyes. She was like a thief being caught, feeling guilty and quickly averted her gaze, but her heart was pounding incessantly. No, why is she nervous? Chapter 10. Top 10 Grades. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 3 consecutive days of exams, tense and fulfilling, passed quickly. However, the results were issued faster, accompanied by a medical examination report. Let me tell you what, I'm not the last one this time. Sun Kiki turned his head and nuzzled in the direction of Lin Jiahui's seat. That one is indeed the last one. Bai Li gave a faint nod and arranged his transcript and physical examination report together. Sun Kiki leaned over and picked up her report, carefully reading it again and again. I'll go. Are you Rh-negative AB type blood? Your panda blood in panda blood. Sun Kiki exaggeratedly looked at Bai Li. Bai Li took the report, folded it and put it in his backpack. It's unbelievable, there are only 2 rare blood types in our class. 2. Bai Li was surprised. Her rare blood type is the rarest, and there may not be many in the whole city. There are actually people in her class who are the same as her. Who else is that? Lin Jiahui, it seems that blood type analysis is not accurate in personality. You two have completely different personalities and actually have the same blood type. Surprisingly, it's such a coincidence. I heard from my uncle that Lin Jiahui's mother passed away from a heart attack because her blood type was rare and there was no suitable match, which completely lost her hope of survival. At that time, her father tried every means and spent a lot of money to hire the most skilled cardiac surgeons at home and abroad, but it was of no use. His father and mother were childhood sweethearts and had a deep emotional connection. At that time, Lin uncle could be said to be heartbroken. Bai Li listened to what Sun Kiki said, and a strange feeling flashed through her heart. She couldn't explain the reason. Was it because she knew that Lin Jijing had a deep relationship with his deceased wife? Bai Li secretly laughed at himself for being too sensitive. Only by putting effort into his deceased wife can he possibly treat his mother well. Sun Cook could see that Bai Li was stunned, so he picked up Bai Li's transcript and flipped through it. Wow, Bai Li, you're actually the top 10 in the class. That's the top 10 in the department, big God. The loud voice made the whole classroom hear clearly, attracting students around to look over and successfully awakening Bai Li's thoughts. Speak quietly. Bai Li took the transcript, rearranged it, and marked the math score in red with a red pen. She made a mistake on a big question in this math exam. It is said that only 2 people in the class answered correctly, one is a math genius who manages numbers, and the other is Chen Mo. Just as Bai Li turned to ask Guan Shu for his problem-solving steps, a loud sound of books falling to the ground echoed from Lin Jiahui's seat. Lin Jiahui stood up, clenched her hands tightly, and walked straight towards Bai Li. Are the top 10 amazing? They're not the top students in their grade. What are you showing off? Who knows if you're cheating? How could you possibly get into the top 10 if you transferred from a 3rd high school? Hey! Bai Li is not flaunting himself. Besides, how can you casually accuse others of cheating and proving evidence? Sun Kiki couldn't muster up the courage to say, but as Lin Jiahui's eye knife swept over him, his momentum immediately weakened. The other classmates were whispering. Yeah, how can you casually accuse others of cheating? If it really does, it will be recorded in the file, but you can't say it randomly. It's just that, it's unlikely. Bai Li smiled and calmly leaned back on the seat, asking, "May I ask, Lin, who has been studying at Xingxian, where did he get in this exam?" "You." Lin Jiahui's face turned red as she covered her chest and turned to yell at her classmates who were whispering, "It's impossible. She can bully her classmates at will, wouldn't she cheat? People like her." Lin Jiahui's voice suddenly stopped before she could finish speaking. Bai Li followed Lin Jiahui's gaze and turned around, realizing that Chen Imo had walked in through the back door of the classroom. Other classmates. Yes, not long ago Bai Li even started hitting people. But Lao Wang didn't deal with Bai Li either. There might be some hidden information, even if it is, we can't just say that Bai Li cheated. There is no causal relationship between the two. Chen Imo scanned around, and his classmates automatically abstained from speaking. They turned around and pretended to be studying seriously, but in reality, they all perked up their ears and vigorously searched for gossip signals. "Brother Chen Imo." Lin Jiahui's voice was weak and trembling, as if it wasn't her who had just been domineering. Sometimes Bai Li really wants to ask her, is this impatient temper really good for her heart? "Come out for a moment." Chen Imo turned around and walked out of the classroom. Lin Jiahui followed slowly behind and didn't forget to say to Bai Li before leaving, "It's all your fault." Bai Li couldn't help but complain roast. "This man is really sick, and he is very sick." Lin Jiahui hung her head and twisted the hem of her school uniform with both hands, standing straight in front of Chen Imo, like a mistaken elementary school student. "I said, I was in the fire escape at the time, and you should understand what I meant." Chen Imo thought that the text message sent that day, with Lin Jiahui's intelligence, would understand enough and not let this matter ferment again. "It's all because of Bai Li. No matter what I did before, you wouldn't treat me like this. You wouldn't refuse to reply to messages, answer phone calls, or come to find me. Woo-woo. Everyone is the same, I detest such practices. But it's because I didn't do well in this exam that I lost the qualification for this position change. Before. Teacher Wang promised me that as long as I did better than Bai Li, I could sit in her seat. I don't care who sits in front of me." Chen Mo's voice became indifferent, causing Lin Jiahui's heart to tighten. "Even if it's me. Even if it's you. I grew up with you since childhood. Sister, don't you care too?" Lin Jiahui widened her eyes and looked incredulous. This is the first time that Chen Imo has made it clear that she is no different from others in his place. She always thought she would be the exception, special. "Everyone is the same, there are people but no one, it's you or someone else," Chen Imo sighed. "If you're not in good health, just calm your mind. I don't think Uncle Lin wants to see you like this either." Lin Jiahui leaned against the railing of the corridor in a dejected manner, wanting to hold on to Chen Imo and ask a few more questions, but she had lost the confidence to delve deeper into the matter. She was afraid of Chen Imo talking to her like this, and also afraid of hearing answers she didn't want to hear. But how could that be so? It must be because of Bai Li, yes, it must be because of her. Since she came, everything seems to be quietly changing. Dad said, let her endure because she won in the end. But what to do? She really can't bear it. Sitting in the classroom, Bai Li sneezed for no reason. Sigh. Is the air conditioning too strong? Bai Li carefully studied the problem-solving approach of the last big question in the tube number math test paper. However, tube number just told him that Chen Mo's problem-solving method is different from his, so you can take a look at it all and there will be many gains. When Bai Li was still taking the exam, he pretended to casually glance at Chen Mo. Since he just returned, he has quietly lowered his head to read, blocking all gossip and attention rituals. Bai Li turned his pen and pondered the possibility of borrowing it. No matter how much he recalled in his mind, it was a scene where they didn't have a pleasant time together. Ask directly. No way. If he were to hold grudges for the last time she shut him down and reject her, how ugly she would be. Don't ask. No way. She must understand this question thoroughly. After much thought, for some reason, the pen accidentally rolled under Chen Mo's chair. Chen Mo, could you please help me pick up a pen? Thank you. Bai Li apologized and smiled, revealing her two little tiger teeth. She had always known how to make good use of her beauty. Faced with her lovely and innocent nature at this moment, as long as she was not a cold-blooded animal, it was difficult to refuse to help her. Sure enough, Chen Mo quietly bent down to pick it up and handed it to her. However, after a while, for some reason, the rubber rolled down again under Chen Mo's chair. Chen Mo, is there any attraction under your chair? Hee, could you please help me again? Chen Mo picked it up again and handed it to her. After going back and forth several times, Chen Mo Dan's dark eyes stared at her and said, "What do you want to do?" Ha, I didn't want to do anything, just that. Chen Mo raised his eyebrows and stared at Bai Li, who was stuttering with interest. She, who used to speak eloquently in front of him, rarely had such clumsiness. Forget it, Bai Li bit his thin lips and made a secret decision. I want to borrow your math paper to take a look. I'm exhausted from winding around. If he really doesn't borrow it, he'll find a way on his own. Sigh.